Today on One Door Studios, if you love spreadsheets, this detailed talk about collateral and bank funding will keep you on the edge of your seat. Also, we announced the winner of last week's trivia prize. Oh, come on, guys, who doesn't geek out over spreadsheets? Good Saturday morning, everybody. Well, it's Saturday morning for us here at One Door Studios. But today we're going to talk about something that we've only talked about one other time in any of our updates. And I think at that time, we maybe only had 200 or 300 investors. And now we're up to over 1,000 and other 600 additional people watching. So this is something that we really want people to understand. And it is collateral. How in the world can a movie that has, or a TV series that hasn't been made yet, how can it be collateral that the bank would see and would take seriously and give a production loan for? This is the one topic that so many people say to me, what are you talking about, collateral? But before we get into all that, last week we did something. We had you answer a question about the book, and whoever got the question right was going to win a hard cover signed copy of Simulated. And so the question was, from what was the name of the valley where Josephine's mentor came from? And the answer was Song Valley. And we had several people answered the question right, but the first person that we know of who answered the question right was Patrick. Who was it, Jason?
Patrick Malore.
So congratulations, Patrick. Your book is actually already in the mail. And by the time you see this video, maybe you already got it. So congratulations.
And Amber Evans also probably answered within 3 or 4 seconds of him. It looks
oh my gosh.
It's tough.
You got it right, too.
So you only have one to give away.
Sorry, Amber.
Yeah. Next time.
Okay. So back to what we were talking about. So John is our financial guru here. And he's done this many times. What's that, Jason?
He's literally a guru.
Literally a guru. So we're going to talk about today how we set up the collateral at the bank to get the production loan. Really quick, in a nutshell, our model is do development funding, $2 million, to develop this IP. Really short version here. Develop the IP so that it becomes collateral that the bank will give a production loan for. And so we can make the movie for $45 or $50 million by only raising $2 million. That's super nutshell. But so, John.
Hey, Stephen, just real quick, before John dives in the deep end here, I just want to give a personal testimony here. I've been in the room with John with another client. I won't say who, but I've seen the lights go on in the eyes of the banker who deals in the entertainment side of the bank when he sees us push this worksheet across the table to him, and he starts to go through it, and John starts to explain it. He was over the moon. I remember him saying that people just don't do this. People don't understand how the bank works normally, and he was just ecstatic. So this isn't just something that, we read about on Wikipedia. We've done it. We know what we're talking about.
So what John's going to show us today is basically the different categories of collateral that this film is. Just examples, which is brand tie-ins is one of them. For example, you've seen movies with BMWs in the movie. They're not there by accident. They're there because there's some contract between the film and BMW. We're talking about distribution, split rights deals. And so we're going to get into the details with John. John, would you mind sharing with us how this works?
Sure. So banks don't take any risks, and that's why the need for collateral. When we go to them with a motion picture, they don't read the script and give us their notes. The things that they're evaluating is the bond that guarantees the collateral's performance, meaning that the picture needs to get done, and it needs to get done on time, on budget, and for a specific script. And the other thing that they look at are the collateral pieces. And so we get at our computer with a sheet that kind of looks like this. It's a production funding worksheet, as you see at the very top. And then the first thing we put in is the picture's budget right there in that space where it says picture budget. In this case, $50 million for calculated. It's the estimated budget. We don't have a script yet, as you know. But it's something that we can come close to estimating, knowing as much as we know about it from the novel itself. So then we look at those categories that you'll see there down a row that's headed by financing participants. And we look at each one of those from a cost of money standpoint to see how expensive they are will be to us. Looking for the categories that are least expensive to us and easy collateral for the bank. So the very first one you see at the top is Government Production Funding Program net receipts. Those are monies that actually come from the government we're filming in. These are collateral, but they're typically in the form of a partial cash advance and a guarantee on the other side for monies that will be paid after the picture's production is completed. So the bank then finances that portion, which is the collateral portion, but it actually comes from a government. Even little governments like Estonia, that's a collateral piece. Now there isn't one for this picture that we're anticipating anyway. But the next one up is production incentive programs. And you'll see that there is an amount there. It's $2.5 million. It only represents 5% of the picture's budget. And typically from production incentives, you can get 25 to 40% of your picture's budget just from production incentives. But this picture calculated, it appears that there will be limited incentives. So it only represents 5% in this case. The next one up are all rights license. This is a unique collateral item that is typically just exclusive to China. And this is a changing, as you may read in the news.
Why China, John? Why China? Is it because they're so big?
Yes, they spend on entertainment in China about as much as we spend in the United States. So the U.S. is the biggest entertainment spender on the planet as a country. In China, we're neck and neck with China and have been for the last 2-3 years. And so China is really, really important. And this picture is especially important because much of it takes place in Shanghai. It's not controversial at all politically, and it's just right up their alley. And we pitched this in China just over a year ago, and they were, two of the largest rights purchasers in China were out of their chairs excited. And they typically put up 50% of the budget for all of the rights. So the bad news is we don't get any other money out of China except for this one license. The good news is that it covers about half of the picture. In this case, $25 million. So you see at that line, it says 25 million, we're raising 50. And so it shows 50% of the collateral covered by that one license. China is kind of unstable. So there's some naysayers especially in U.S. banks and completion bond companies that say, are you sure you're going to be able to do this? Now, we will probably be using film finances for our completion bond company for this film. They actually have an office in Shanghai.
Yeah.
So they are aware of the marketplace. And when they know who we're using to secure this license for us in China, they'll become very convinced. And that makes the bank very convinced. And those are the only two people we really need to convince. However, in this case, even though we have China, we're looking at over-collateralizing this project. So you'll see down in the next line.
And that's, John, the reason we're over-collateralizing this project is because you're saying just in case China doesn't come through, we still have a method of financing this.
Yeah, it's a communist country. They can change at the drop of a hat. They can alter all manner of different things. And so we're anticipating that this is where we're going to get half of our budget. On the other hand, if we don't, and it completely goes away, we don't get any of our budget from it, we have enough collateral to go beyond it.
Right. Good.
So this the next row you see down there is an exclusive U.S. and Canada or North America viewer direct which Disney likes to call Premier Access Streaming License. So this is the license for when you see Mulan come up, or Black Widow, and it says you can see it at home if you subscribe to our service. However, it's $29.99 for one viewing. It's about the cost of going to the theater. This is
minus the popcorn.
What?
Yeah.
With your
Minus
whole
the
family,
popcorn.
minus the popcorn.
Yes, yes.
And it's $150.
That's right.
You go to the theater. Yeah, they do have a markup on the popcorn. So anyway, this is a huge area. And the reason it's at the top, and it didn't used to be, 18 months ago, it wasn't even on this list, if you can imagine. That's
crazy.
Yeah, I'm going to stop you right there for a second, John. I'm going to stop right there because people ask a lot when they see our Facebook ads and they know we're doing a movie. And then everybody, all the naysayers are like, yeah, but the theater is going to be closed, the pandemic, this and that, as if that's going to destroy the project. And media continues to be sold and bought, even in the midst of the worst parts of the pandemic. And you're about to find out that the production companies are actually making, not production companies, but Disney made more money off of Mulan because it was direct to consumer than they would have had it been in theaters.
Yeah, very true. And because it's direct to consumer, which Disney never uses that language because they don't want people thinking about them getting 100% of the money directly. But nevertheless, it's way more powerful in income because from a theatrical release, the theaters, the exhibitors keep 50% of the income for themselves. So when 100% of it comes to the studio, Disney in this case, it becomes a really, really powerful earnings area. And they completely restructured their distribution, as have all 5 of the major studios. And this is now at the top of their food chain at every studio. And that is direct to consumer income. Because they get 100% of it, and it's almost as much or more than the gross is, and it doesn't net down right away to half of the gross, but they get to keep all of it. So this is a really valuable area. So how valuable? Opening weekend for major pictures, such as we're intending this to be, it's $60 million. And after that, it's more than twice that. Usually about.
Hold on a second, John. How can we possibly predict that?
That we would. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a really good point. So let's just back up a second. When we're going out to sell these licenses, meaning we're sitting down with somebody like Universal and saying, "You want this for Peacock," which is their big streaming service. How bad do you want this? And they're looking at what opening weekend might be. They look at the property. Now, unlike the bank, this is the studio. So the studio is going to read the script. That's their biggest evidence. But before they read the script, we're going to show them a mocked up, which is called a rip-o-matic, 15 or 30 second spot commercial for the film, for the motion picture. And they'll get a sense for, the picture hasn't been made yet, so they'll get a sense for what that campaign will look like. How much action, how much adventure, how much romance, how much comedy, and so forth. And they'll get a feel for what this might be able to make just based on that. But then there are
that's called the campaign signature, right, John?
Yeah, they're looking at the campaign signature. Exactly right. Those components of emotional drivers that go into the campaign.
And then those are compared to other films in the last year or year and a half or so. I don't know what they did.
Those that have been released recently.
So it becomes an educated guess, a very educated guess.
Well,
one question in investors' minds might be, how long has this kind of process been used by the film industry, and how accurate is it?
Good question. Let's just bring in one other component yet, then we'll answer that question. And that is the other thing that is a huge qualifier is what quality of director is going to be directing, going to be helming the production of this motion picture, and what kind of cast. So we go in with not just this rip-o-matic, this spot, but we go in with a short list of directors and cast. So the short list allows them to go down and see maybe 5 or 6 or 7 directors, and then to look at it and say, yeah, any of these would be fine. We're confident in them, but maybe not this one or that one. So they'll pre-approve most of the directors on our list. But then we know that when we get the commitment from them, it's contingent on us getting a certain director to helm it and certain casts that are going to be starring in the film. And it may only just be one person if it's really the hero dominant film, which most pictures are. Anyway, so those are the components that they're going to base their decision on: the director and actor shortlist, the script itself, and the rip-o-matic. So how long has this been going on? It was really perfected at Warner Brothers under the leadership of Barry Reardon, who is a long time head of studio at WB, and he made a science out of this that spread quickly to the other studios as studio execs moved around. This kind of science or procedure moved to their turfs as well, ending up in it being perfected over decades to the fine science it is now, which is pretty extraordinary. Back to you can see how this works, that each of these collateral pieces have a certain value. And so we precast these. We look at the picture. We consider how much we may be able to negotiate each one of these things for. This premier access on this one row, it starts with exclusive US, Canada, viewer direct premier access. That we're looking at, if in fact we can get $60 million from opening weekend, and that's something that's reasonable, and we can get more than double that, so over $100 million, then what's a pre-license likely to be? Something that we can negotiate, that they would sign up for. And in this row, you'll see we use $25 million. It's just a small portion of this, but that's what makes it easy for them to license. So we make it easy because we say it's just 25 million of what they realize will be a 9-figure amount. And the license calls for them only putting up 10% of that amount. So for $2.5 million advance and signing a license for $25 million, they get the rights to something that's going to earn them over $100 million. And
that's how really quickly for just a simple piece of language, just for people who aren't as heady about this to understand. So these are contracts that occur before the movie is filmed and before the bank financing happens. And so these contracts are as good as cash, right, John? So that's why it's collateral that you can go to the bank with.
That's correct.
Okay, good.
Yeah, with the bond, they're what makes up the collateral that gives us the cash from the bank that we need to produce the film. So they need to be reasonable. Now, lest you think that we just tossed away most of our earnings, we still have a really lucrative license with them. So even though they got it for 25 million, they still have to share that direct-to-consumer income with us. So we're going to earn most of that 9 figures, or we'll be negotiating for about half of it that will come to us. So next one up is, you'll see that it says this premier access. So that's just one part of it. It really isn't the streaming license. So the next thing we look at is the streaming license with the studio. And we won't go into the detail because some of you might be falling asleep. But suffice it to say that each one of these categories are things that we can do. They're large amounts, and we can set them up. They're predictable. They're beneficial for us in negotiating the other licenses. The most fundamental thing is that line down there, a couple of lines down. It says exclusive U.S. and Canada theatrical license. And retail home entertainment that bundles in there with it. This is the most important piece. One of the first questions that territories outside the U.S. and Canada ask: who's handling it in the United States? They want to know who the studio is, because the U.S. studios have made a science out of this, and they're highly respected on the rest of the planet. And if they have made a commitment to release the motion picture in the US, then it's a high likelihood everyone else that is a major distributor will want to have it for their territory.
You get the big guy behind you, and then everything else falls into place. Everybody says, "Oh, look, they're in. We want to be."
That's right. That's exactly right. So, and now if you look across that row, it shows nothing there for collateral. And we may actually get something that we would use as collateral, but the big thing is the distribution agreement itself. And what they're giving us in tandem with that is a commitment for a number of theaters that they'll open in, number of screens, and also the amount of money they're going to spend to make the brand a big deal, enough to heat up our target audiences and get them out for opening weekend. So we're going to ask for at least $40 million, maybe up to 60 for their commitment. It isn't anything that gives us additional collateral that we'll use for our bank loan, but it gives us the muscle that we need for our opening, for sure. That's crucial. So each one of these add up. You'll look down at total participants, in that total down there under percentage, it says 165%. And then next to that is $82,500,000. Well, if our budget's only 50, and we all, why would we get 165% of the collateral? Well, part of it is because 50% is China, and we want to, if they take China out, we still have enough to finance our film. But that still puts us at 115% of budget. And the 15% has to do with our having to reserve out for interest. So the bank takes no risk, even deducting from the collateral value the amount of interest that they'll be earning during the time that this loan is earning interest. So
I want to ask a question. Am I interrupting in a bad spot?
No, it's great.
So I wanted to ask a question. I think we might have covered the answer to this a little earlier, but I wanted to ask a question for, a naysayer or a skeptic. On some of those lines, you have dollar amounts and they're like $25 million, right? For China. What was the number again for the US market for the first year split rights?
For streaming?
Yeah, for streaming.
Also $25 million.
Also $25 million. So a little analogy I wanted to use was I was watching the show Clarkson's Farm. This is Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear. Now he has a farm, and he decided he wanted to grow wasabi. It was a great idea because he thought that wasabi was so lucrative, and he kind of checked what he could get per pound for wasabi. And he told his helper to go into London, into the Japanese restaurants and sell the wasabi. And when he asked for the price, they laughed his representative out of every single restaurant because the price he was asking was so ridiculous. So these assumptions for the 25 million, other people may be going, how are you assuming 25 million is what they're going to ask for? Are they going to laugh you out of the boardroom or off the Zoom meeting?
Exactly. Well, that's why how much might this make opening weekend and for the whole time, just for the direct to consumer. Similar kind of logic for the first year value of an exclusive right to a major series or a major motion picture. Obviously, if the studio is going to make it, it's going to cost them the whole production budget. So they'll spend, in this case, $50 million in order to get the rights to the film or series. So what if they got 80 or 85% of the value of this project the first year? That's when they've gotten 80 or 85% of the project. And we go into them and say, look, what we want you to put up is just half of the budget. And you'll get the first year exclusive. No one else will have it in the US and Canada. Then they've got to consider, would it be more beneficial for them? Does it make more financial sense to spend $25 million and get the first year than spending $50 million and getting only 15% more of the value? So it becomes an easier proposition for them to say, oh my gosh, we need so much content to fill our streaming pipeline. If we can get this one for half the cost and get 85% of the value, that's an easy decision to make. So that's kind of the logic on that.
By the way, if you're watching this and you happen to produce films, this is gold. You might want to take notes.
Yes.
The video.
We encourage our competition. There's plenty of room. The audiences are hungry for great content. So if we're making it, this is a good thing to follow. So anyway, you'll see that on the left-hand side of the page are the assumptions, and then below that, the actual application of those assumptions, which is how much reserve they're holding out or how much interest they're charging us. And all of this goes down to the bottom of the page, which is that the collateral value from that $82,500,000 devolves down to $77 million at the end of the day. So 77 million is still way more than 50 million. Even if we take the 25 million out, we still have enough collateral. So that's why it says collateral sufficiency, yes. So we're in great shape. And that's the process. And we do this, we look at this way early on. The first thing we do is the green light, the creative green light to assure that we're interested in this movie, is speaking to the audience and giving them the kind of experience we believe the audience really wants, and we're happy to be responsible for. The second thing in green lighting is that it's going to earn at least twice its cost, which means the portion coming back to the producer is, in this case, the producer's gross exceeds $100 million. And if it does, then it's worth the risk for us to go out for it. We prove that in-house because we know that we're going to be talking to investors, and they'll want to know that it has at least that 2-to-1 earnings to cost ratio. And then we come to this, that is, okay, but where are we going to get the collateral for a production loan? And that's where the production funding worksheet comes in, and we go through this process and do what ifs. Now, there are several ways to cut this. We don't have to use all of these, obviously. We don't have to have more collateral than 100%.
But we have a safety net. We're creating a safety net for ourselves, so that way, if one of these things doesn't work out, we have another piece of collateral elsewhere.
That's why it's called a worksheet. You know, we could produce this in the Bavarian studios. We could get about a 40% or so production incentive from them, which would completely change this sheet. And we could do second units in Shanghai. We could do all manner of different things. So we look at all of those and keep pushing the numbers around until we come up with what we believe is the optimal way for us to collateralize the picture. And that's what we lock in. That's what we go out and we call it subscribing the collateral. We take just one piece and go out and say, look, if you put this in, the rest of it's coming in from other participants. And we set each piece up on a subscription basis. And then when it's all set, we go around and actually pick up at the signed licenses, take them to the bank, and with the bond, we get the production loan.
So, John, at this point, I imagine the people watching, some people have some pretty deep questions right now. And so, and we want to be able to, I mean, goodness gracious, this is an investment. Why not answer those questions? So we want to help. So we want to help you out there if you have questions right now that you're just burning to know the answer to. So a way for do that is number one, you can ask it straight on the in the comment section below here, or you can email one of us. You can email Stephen at OneDoorStudios.com. You can email John at OneDoorStudios.com. Or you can email Jay at OneDoorStudios.com. We're happy to try to answer these questions for you.
Hey, Stephen, I've got one burning question that I've heard so many times and had myself early on before I started to be mentored by John. And that's kind of this question of if you just look at the big rocks, it's clear that everything kind of hinges on getting a studio to sign us up, a major studio in the US, and then all the other pieces fall into place. And most people have some experience with independent production shops that are going to the studios and asking for money and really kind of trying to sell their project to them. So I guess the question, and I'll let you answer it, John, because you can do it better than I could. What differentiates us from those kinds of production shops, and what gives us such confidence that Calculated will be picked up?
Well, most pictures are financed by the studio. They're not financed by banks. So they're going to the studio, and the studio is saying, let us be your bank. And we'll give you 110% of your budget. And so the producer or production company makes 10% more, or they'll give 115 or 120%, depending on the deal that they can strike with the producer. So that's how the deal is made. And they're working with the production side of the studio, that part of the studio that's responsible for picking up and grinding content. So the distribution side of the studio can distribute it. We go to the distribution side of the studio. That's why we have a Rip-O-Matic. And we're Rip-O-Matic.
Rip-O-Matic is a trailer of the movie before it's made that is built on other pieces of footage that could be used and that would be similar to what might be in the film.
Right. The distribution side of the studio looks at that before they really are interested in much about the story. They want to know if they can sell people and how easy is their job, is it going to be for them? And if it's something that's very predictable, that's going to really wind people up, the target audience is up, then the studio wants the picture. So the only question to them is, how well is it going to be made? Who's the director? What's the cast look like? And so that's why we had the short list for both of those. But to answer Jason's question, yeah, it seems impossible to people who've never worked with the distribution side. Those producers can say, "What? I don't even know people over on that side," and yet, for us, as for the more sophisticated producers, the production companies that are producing for the studios, this is the only path, because they want to be involved in all the earnings of the picture. And the studios, the theatrical release in North America is part of the equation, part of the income, but it isn't the whole world. The U.S. represents only about a third of the theatrical earnings. And the theatrical earnings are not even the biggest part of the earnings. So we look at the whole world. It's in our hands. So we've gone, my goodness, we've gone like 40 minutes or so. And so if you guys if you're still hanging on with us, I salute you. Okay. But I know there's people out there who are just eat, sleep, and breathe business. And I know this has probably been a delight for you to watch. And I know this fascinates me. It fascinates Jason way more. I'm the creative mind. Jason and John, they just love spreadsheets.
and worksheets.
Art.
So
But we prefer the creative side, but
Yeah.
the business side is necessary.
the business side is crucial. It just a lot of good movies that have been made that have never seen the light of day because they failed to have a solid business plan. So thanks for hanging with us this long today. And we really appreciate everything you guys have done for us as investors and the interaction that you have with us on WeFunder. And feel free to shoot us questions, and we'll do our best. And the answers to these questions might be a little longer because these are deep issues. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us, everybody. John, Jay, we good?
We are.
Ciao.
Ciao.
That's it.